Right.
You know?
I mean, you said no French fries at our offsite.
Right,
And so
right.
that was a shift for us. That was a
Yeah.
clear boundary. I was
That was
appreciative
a
that you
big
did that.
shift
It was a little
because,
hard, but
yeah, because I was used to French fry Fridays,
I
right?
know. So here we are today, and we're going to flip the lens on boundaries. We're going to start with a definition. And there are 4 components to boundaries. There is location, how much space we have between us and others. There is emotional, how much we share with others. There is intellectual, how much we actually want to talk about, what topics in the news, for example. And then there is also time. What boundaries do we put on time? How much time are we going to spend in that meeting? How much time are we going to spend at work? And it comes up so much in our coaching, so that's why we really want to spend some time on it, right, Aman?
Yeah.
And one of the important things we want to say is that when we align our values and our actions with our boundaries, they both protect us and nurture us. They do both of those things. And it's so important for us to really link our values with our boundaries. So, Aman, what's an example of how you've thought about your values as they relate to your boundaries?
I love that. I mean, I really love that distinction of being clear on our values, because our values and our vision really help us know, what am I going to say yes to? What am I going to say no to? What are my limits? And in the last several years, I've really started to value health a lot more. And I've had my own chronic conditions and episodes with health. And it really has become such a central value that on a day-to-day basis, I'm setting boundaries around that.
Right.
You know?
I mean, you said no French fries at our offsite.
Right,
and so
right.
that was a shift for us. That was
Yeah.
a clear boundary. I was
That was
appreciative
a
that you
big
did that.
shift
It was a little
because-
hard, but
Yeah, because I was used to French fry Fridays, right?
know.
I always wanted French fries on Fridays, but now, because I'm paying attention to my cholesterol, there's going to be less French fries. So that's a boundary, that's a limit of knowing, here's something that I really value. And so how am I making decisions around that? And sometimes it's a day-to-day thing of staying committed to lifestyle choices. And sometimes it's really, really big decisions, which can be a lot harder, and saying, no, I actually am not going to do that because I'm going to prioritize my health. So I just really love that linkage of values with boundaries.
excellent. Yeah.
What about you, Lori? What are some boundaries that you've set around your values?
So I would say health is also one for me, and then time. I really enjoy my work time as well as my play time.
Yeah.
Or my free time, and I actually find that my free time makes my work time more productive. And so I'm very clear on what days and what times of the day I am going to work, being aware of when I am most productive and not. But time is just something that's really important to me, again, to balance when I am working and not working, and ensuring that I have just time to myself to relax so that my work time is most productive. And so I will say yes to meetings at certain times and no to meetings at certain times. And I'll also be very clear as much as I can when I'm in a meeting to ensure we're clear on what we want to get out of the meeting, so that our time during the meeting is used as effectively as possible.
Yeah, that's great. I think that for most people, including myself, when I first started learning about boundaries over a decade ago, physical and time were really easy to identify. You know, like, okay, physical space, personal space, and then time blocking, time management. But emotional and intellectual are sometimes not as easy to see or define. And I think they're incredibly important because with emotional boundaries, it's like what you started with, it's what we choose to share.
Yeah.
It's also what we choose to allow.
Yes.
You know, so we live in a world where I see it on my LinkedIn feed all the time. Do you have a toxic manager or toxic workplace? And, all these things that could be happening to us, as opposed to what do I allow?
Yes.
And so with emotional boundaries, I think of, am I allowing a certain level of disrespect? Am I allowing a certain level of treatment? And so really tuning into my own emotions, becoming aware of them, and checking in with, am I crossing somebody else's boundaries, and are they crossing mine?
Yep. And one could call emotional boundaries technology boundaries as well, and just
Yes.
being clear on, you know what, I gotta stop with the technology because it's really affecting my emotions. So with a lot of my clients and with myself, I will put a clear boundary on, I am not looking at social media on certain days or at certain times because it does affect my emotions.
Well, let's talk about tech for a second, because we have a separate video on drama.
Yes,
but
we do.
I think that a lot of drama sometimes starts with what's happening on technology. The text messages that you might get, the WhatsApp messages, the emails. I mean, it used to be email. It used to be, make sure you take a deep breath or pause or reflect before you send that email. But now we have Slack, we have chat, we have pings, and it's so hard to read text messages.
Yep.
And it's so easy to cross each other's boundaries with technology.
Yeah, and with, again, myself and my clients, I suggest that people get very clear and establish norms with their teams on, if it's an emergency, call me. If it is not an emergency and it is due on a certain date, send an email, and in the title of the email, write due on Monday by 5 o'clock. All of those kinds of boundaries so that people are clear and they can also better understand and better prioritize what to read and when, and also to turn off certain technology when they're in a meeting, etc. So I think
yeah, I have that. Like, if I get to a mode where I'm double, triple, quadruple texting someone, it's usually time for a phone call.
yeah, absolutely.
Even though phone calls in our current world and reality are kind of like oh my gosh, what's happening? There must be an emergency. Why didn't you text first?
Well, and it can solve a lot of problems really quickly and
Yeah.
save a lot of time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So I'd love to hear a bit about some of the coaching that you've done around boundaries. I know we've talked a bit about some clients that you've worked with, especially around fundraising and how boundaries show up.
All kinds of ways, all different things. So boundaries are probably up there in the top 3 to 5 topics that come up with my clients. And there are 3 types of boundaries that show up most often. The first is porous. And so porous boundaries are where there actually aren't any boundaries. It's just kind of like having your front door open all the time. So anything can come in and anything can go out. And you can already see how that would be a problem if your front door was open all the time. And then on the flip side, we have rigid boundaries where there isn't a door. It's more like a wall that's up and nothing can come in and nothing can go out. And then the third type is empowered, where it is like a functional door that's working, where you can open the door and you can close the door. But most often what I encounter with my clients is porous boundaries. And sometimes leaders will just say, well, I'm just really busy or I'm exhausted. And that is really true. I mean, leaders, managers, executives have a lot on their plate, a lot going on. And yet some of them don't realize that what's contributing to the exhaustion is a lack of boundaries. I mean, can you think of somebody with porous boundaries?
Yeah, so I just finished a 360 assessment for a COO of a nonprofit who is so passionate about the cause of helping impoverished children. And it's so admirable. And he says yes to so many things, and he's working 24/7. And also, because he's so focused on this vision that he has and this passion that he has, which again is absolutely admirable, he isn't saying no to things that are associated with that vision, and he's starting to burn out. And it's affecting his health, and it's affecting his time with his family, etc., to the point where he might decide to go to another organization, because it's just really, it's really burning him out.
And that's a classic example of somebody with porous boundaries. So what are some of the top things we see in someone who has porous boundaries? I can speak personally to this because I have struggled with porous boundaries, but an inability to say no, or when saying no, feeling incredibly guilty or feeling very obligated, taking on work that is not yours, not distributing the work, and just getting really overcommitted very quickly, trying to absorb things. And sometimes what I see people with porous boundaries are overly responsible. So they want to take on things that are outside of their control, or try to influence things that are outside of their control, which is fine, but to really try to work on things that they can't work on, which is other people's feelings, reactions, trying to control everything in their environment. And what I have seen with people with porous boundaries is not only are they over responsible, they have the intention of giving, of helping. So the flip side of the porous and being overcommitted are the rigid boundaries, where it's just a wall and nothing is going out and nothing is coming in. And what I have seen with leaders that have rigid boundaries is they're trying to keep up this persona where they don't need anyone else. They're kind of hyper independent, and I'm going to muscle through this, or I'm just going to take care of these
Won't
things.
ask for help.
They won't ask for help. Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have a specific example that comes up?
I mean, so many that I've worked with or coached where they just get so overwhelmed and won't ask for help. And again, the irony of all of this is that they're missing an opportunity to develop the people below them or their peers to make things more effective for the organization. Yeah. And it's almost like a physical, as I describe it, I can feel the rigidity.
Yeah.
So
not distributing the leadership, not
Exactly.
distributing ownership and accountability, which of course we know is a problem.
Yeah.
And also not being vulnerable. So there's an emotional guardedness where we don't really get to see the person and their authentic self or what they might be going through. And it feels very lonely as I talk about it. It can be very, very isolating. But people tend to flop between these two. So porous, okay, I've gotten burnt out, so now I want to quit my job, or I want to take a sabbatical, or I just want to cut off from everything. So then going to rigid. Now I'm overly isolated, and I'm walled off and I'm disconnected. So going back to porous. But really, it's kind of this jumping back and forth as opposed to finding that path of empowered boundaries.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to just say that, as we describe these, we're not being judgmental. We're all human.
Yeah.
And we have all been in this place of rigid and porous. We're just trying to describe it so that our leaders who we work with can become more aware of when they're in that place of being more porous, of being more rigid, because when they flip the lens on themselves and see themselves, rather than being in it, but actually see themselves in that place of porous or rigid, then they are more empowered to be in choice to open the door, close the door, say yes, say no at the right time that is in line with their values. So again, they can have more of a nurturing, developing approach to their leadership, and also be protecting what is important to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. When I was very open with my boundaries and very porous, I was overcommitted. And the first thing that suffered was my health.
Yeah.
And then I went to a rigid place of like, nope, I'm going to wall off and just take care of my health. But I was like, okay, this is working. And in the place of empowered boundaries, what's really important is considering self and others and the whole context. So how can I take care of myself and consider those around me and the environment that I'm in? So empowered boundaries are where we're in a mindset of partnership. So how do we first partner with ourselves to be very clear on our own values, our own needs, and then to partner with others on what are things that we want to mutually move forward on.
Yeah. I find this topic to be so important at so many levels. And I think people sometimes, when they work with boundaries and they start to set them, they can feel a little bit selfish because they're saying no to things. And over time, when they start to practice, they realize that that perception of selfishness is actually helping them to be a better leader and a better parent, partner, community leader, whatever it is. And so again, it's just really practicing and shifting the mindset or shifting the lens so that they can help others.
There was a wise soul that once said to me when I really started to set boundaries around my values and priorities, and I felt guilty. And this wise soul said, Aman, do you feel bad or is it uncomfortable? And I went, oh, yeah, I think that it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And even though I felt bad, guilty, but it wasn't wrong, it was just uncomfortable. So that's another thing I would invite people to sit with is, are you okay with the discomfort of trying something new?
Yeah, I love that. So our question for leaders listening to this is, what are your values? And how are your boundaries in align or not with those values, whether they be time, emotion, intellectual, etc.? And how can you practice perhaps even being a little bit uncomfortable so that you can have more empowered boundaries?